Okay, this is Redwood Wonk. My name is Eric Kirk. I am with Chuck Rogers of
Hi, Eric.
Lost Coast Media, and we have plenty to talk about today. We're going to do something a little bit different today, and we'll integrate the news into it as we speak. But we're going to actually show you some maps now. Chuck and I aren't going to see the maps, and we're obviously going to have to about them and not rely too heavily on them because we are also playing on the radio as well as television. So, but the maps will be integrated later, and what we're using is interactive maps. If you Google 270 to win, anybody can make their own map predicting the Electoral College, how it's going to come out. It's really interesting as an analytical tool, and you can look at what other people have predicted, including some of the more famous pundits. But so we're going to do that today. But maybe we'll start off just catching up a little bit on the news. What hits you as news, Chuck?
Well, we're recording this prior to the first week of August. The thing I'm really looking forward to is Joe Biden says he's going to name his VP running mate the first week of August. So the week after we're recording this. And, I have to say I'm still sticking with Kamala Harris. I know Karen Bass, her name has been coming up. She's terrific. Would have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
I still just have a gut feeling that it's going to be Kamala Harris. So I'm really looking forward to that. And, still we have problems coming from the White House, especially with regard to the COVID-19 response. Now we have the president retweeting people who have been discredited in so many different areas. And, I think that his numbers are going to continue to plummet as long as he's so inept at responding to this.
Yeah, we keep saying, I think now this will be our third show in which we say Biden doesn't get any better. He hasn't gotten much better, but he hasn't gotten any worse. I mean, the leads are still there. I'm looking at a series of them, the everywhere from 6 to 9 points. Rasmussen has them up by 6 points. Pardon me, down by 6 points, and that's a Republican.
That's a Republican-leaning survey. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So, and they say that, last time he won the Electoral College with and being down 2.1% in the popular vote, they say that it's mathematically feasible that he could actually be as far down as 5 percentage points, although it's really stretching it, and still win. But he would have to do really well in the Rust Belt in order to do that. And when you have the lowest spread being 6 points, that just seems like a real stretch that he could manage to win an electoral college vote with that kind of spread.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree, 100%. And a lot of people who do the statistical analysis on this whole thing, you're right. They would be more comfortable, given the vagaries of the electoral college, if the win were closer to 8%, rather than down around 3 to 5. 8 to 9 is when it starts getting very difficult to find a pathway for Trump to 270.
Yeah, I mean, normally, really, I mean, that's considered a blowout in any other situation. So, anyways, we want to discuss that. One thing I want to discuss before we get into going state by state and analyzing, how the presidential race is going in each state is we haven't really completely run into the political fallout yet of the decision to send federal troops to Oregon and to Portland, and the heavy-handed tactics that they've used, which appears by all accounts to have inflamed the situation. Yeah. And it looks like he's going to be pulling them out at this point, saying, well, the Portland police, he'll find some way to save face on that. But it looks like that backfired on him, and it really scares people because I don't know what's scarier, whether or not he's authoritarian, thinking he can just violate states' rights by sending troops in to deal with what are states' matters, or if he's basically using the domestic military as props for his election campaign. I mean, that's,
Yeah, to continue to complain that there's anarchy in the streets when in fact it's the federal troops that inflamed what were peaceful protests. Yeah, that could be. Yeah, he has announced that some of those troops will be leaving Portland, but I heard just today, and maybe this has changed, but at least earlier today when I was catching up on the news, there are reports that some of those do you call them troops or law enforcement, whatever they are, whoever they are, because we really don't know, might be going to Milwaukee and Detroit next.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. They're pulling out of Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle. And there are people who say, I don't know if this is true or not, but there are people who worry that this is a precursor to some sort of declaration of martial law leading up to the election as a way of controlling the movements of people around Election Day. There are also people who are worried about what's going to happen with the post office, given the amount of mail-in ballots that are expected this year. So we really don't know what's going on with those federal law enforcement / troops.
So I do know that some of them have reported to be Border Patrol. They pulled them off of Border Patrol to do this.
Not trained in riot control in urban areas, by the way.
They definitely not trained. I mean, they didn't. I've seen the clips. It was just complete chaos. I mean, they just led to it, and it really made it difficult for the Portland police. Put them in a tough spot. So, anyways, we have that. We also have. I guess this Friday is the last that anybody can receive the enhanced unemployment. And the Republicans in the Senate, the Democrats had a bill out to renew it that's been out for a couple of months. The Republicans were probably thinking, well, we'll reopen, the economy will get better, and we won't need another stimulus. And now all of a sudden they're having to scramble for one, but they can't even get consensus within their own ranks. Graham doesn't want $600. They're talking about $100 or $200. They're wanting some movements from the Democrats. The Democrats are saying, look, come up with a bill and then we'll talk. But until then, I'm not going to even respond.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that's not being dealt with because they don't have a bill is the moratorium on evictions.
Yeah.
So people are going to be out of money. They're not going to be able to pay rent. So guess what? The first week of September, unless something happens, you'll have people who will have no place to live and will not be able to pay their bills. And what's going to happen at that point, 2 months before the election?
All right. Well, so we've got chaos. It doesn't seem to be getting any better for the president. He's bringing doctors in that are crazy, talking about sex with demons and how Jesus is going to destroy the Facebook platform if they don't put her videos back up. He's complaining that he's not as popular as Dr. Fauci. Nobody likes me. He says. I mean, it's just really getting bad. He's bragging about having passed a non-dementia test that was intended to be easy, and is wondering why people aren't amazed that he can remember 5 nouns. I mean, it's just anyway. It goes on to be chaotic. Biden has out a plan for an economic plan to deal with racial inequalities, a very detailed one, reforming the empowerment or opportunity zone stuff, trying to work out the federal guidelines for loans and the rest, trying to undo the fact that there were federal the federal covenants that were imposed on a lot of suburbs that were federally financed back in the 1950s that actually overtly prevented Black people from being able to buy those homes, and trying to undo all of that. He's got a pretty detailed plan. I haven't really looked at it, but it's been the source of some discussion. But unfortunately, it's not something that's flashy, that's, for headlines.
Well, it isn't, although he already has ads running that get to what you're talking about there, and he's trying to scare the people in the suburbs on one hand, saying that if Biden is elected, there will be a lot of crime in the suburbs. And on the other hand, he's also got an ad running that says that there will be no low-income affordable housing in the suburbs. So, that's going to turn off a lot of people. And that's just he's once again making the Republican mistake of going backwards instead of forwards.
Yeah.
And recall that Bob Dole made that same mistake when he was running for president, calling himself a bridge to the past. Well, it was over once he did that. And Trump is making the same mistake. And yeah, on the dementia test, person, woman, man, camera, TV does not get you a master's degree. And it's just buffoonery that he would go on national television bragging about the fact that he passed a cognition test. You would hope, right, that the person who's commander in chief would be able to do that and would be able to identify the elephant and the crocodile and the chicken in the picture.
Well, plus I want to know why he's taking it. Is it routine? Do they do it for all presidents, or are there concerns?
Yeah. Good question. Good question. And we still don't really know why he went to what prompted his visit to Walter Reed, whatever that was a couple of months ago, right?
Yeah. Right, and his having a hard time drinking with one hand. I mean, he's got problems that he's got to deal with, and I don't see any sign of his campaign settling down. So,
no, and also, we had the Attorney General testifying before a House committee that, and at least as far as I'm concerned, it did not go well. It was a little scarier than I thought it was going to be. And there are reports that the American Bar Association and the Bar of the District of Columbia may take a look at some of the things he's been doing and take a look at his license. So
and some of the things that he said in the hearing yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right, why don't we get to it? So, hopefully now, magically, one of our maps can appear and maybe the other and be labeled, Eric's map and Chuck's map. But and if people have the opportunity to notice some of the differences, we've got a lot of similarities and we've got a bunch of differences. But I was thinking, why don't we start with the safe seats? Because I've got safe states. Because I've got at least one safe state that you don't have. No, I've got two safe states that you don't call safe. You call them lean. The categories are safe is dark red or dark blue. Lean is a bit lighter, likely is a bit lighter than that, meaning, probably going to win, but no guarantees. And then lean is very light blue or pink. And then if you see something on the map that is, I guess that's tan, we're saying that's a toss-up at this point. And again, these are based on polls and analysis that are happening right now. This is if the election was to happen today or tomorrow. And no guarantees that it's going to be like this in a few months, but it hasn't changed much in the past month for me. So why don't we talk a little bit about, I noticed you have Alaska as a likely rather than a safe.
Yeah, there are so many issues in Alaska, and that's more of Alaska and Iowa for me are kind of just gut feelings. I don't think Alaska is easy to poll, first of all.
Right.
And I think that most of the voting population is concentrated in an urban area. Around Anchorage, yet turnout in that state seems to be good, yet a lot of people there have to vote by mail. So I think there's a lot of question about Alaska and how to read it. So I just think it's very difficult to poll and it's difficult to predict.
For fewer people in a state that's like 1/3 of the lower 48, in area. But fewer people that live in San Francisco, 7 by 7 miles. Yeah. So it's hard to poll. And there is some independent tendencies there, and maybe, who knows. The other one you have as I have as a safe state, but you have as likely as Utah.
Yeah, I have Utah. Well, yeah, I have Utah likely red. I could be convinced to make that lean red instead of likely red.
Wow.
I think that there's still a lot to be determined about what's going to happen in Utah. Let's recall that one of their senators, Mitt Romney, voted to impeach, right?
Yes.
And didn't suffer any consequences there. There were no angry editorials that I can recall or anything like that. I think the Utah voting public places a lot on content of character and who the person is and what their moral compass is. And I think the longer they get to know Donald Trump, the less of a moral compass they think he even has. Yeah. And I think that that's important to them, and good for it. So I don't know. I don't think it's safe.
Okay. I also, a lot of Latinos have been moving in. California expats have been moving in. So it could be gradually changing, maybe not as dramatically as Nevada, which you actually have as safe, I have as likely. But Nevada has changed a lot. And Mormons, unlike Protestant evangelicals seem to have this thing, well, maybe he's not moral, but God is working through him. Right. That doesn't play to Mormon theology. No. And they're looking at him as immoral, some of them, and maybe don't want to vote.
Yeah, he's just a bad guy, not the kind of guy that they want representing them.
Yeah, so it could be. Yeah. Well, one state which I have as likely that you have as safe is Montana, and I'm actually feeling bullish for the Democratic chances there because I read an article that there is enthusiasm among Democrats, not just against Trump, but also for a chance to have two Democratic senators in there, with Bullock defeating the Republican incumbent there. And the race is pretty close. And I just think with that type of energy, where they're looking for that chance, and Tester has now won 2 elections there statewide, John Tester, the Democrat, and not all that, blue doggish a Democrat. He votes progressive when it matters and seems to throw his token conservative votes in when it's not going to make a difference anyway, and on issues like that. And so, Tester is, pretty good on some issues from a progressive point of view, and yet it won re-election, not, I wouldn't say by comfortable, but it wasn't a photo finish. It was pretty well. So Bullock has been elected statewide. He's the governor. And I just don't know that there's going to be the same level of enthusiasm for Trump or the Republican incumbent. So
if there's enthusiasm for Bullock and his candidacy, that will certainly help drive turnout in the Democratic column in that state. There's no question about that. So that one is possible as well. And look, who knows what's going to happen? Trump could continue down this spiral downward, and we could end up with even more of a landslide than what you and I are both talking about in these maps. I mean, even though we do have some disagreements, we both have Biden way beyond 270.
Oh, yes. So, yeah. At this point, I've got him at 320.
Yeah, I have him at 318. So I think the biggest difference you and I have is that I have 77 in the toss-up column.
Yes. Yeah, but you got Texas in the toss-up column.
That's recent. I know. I know. Last time I said I've been burned by Texas and was not going to move it into the toss-up column. I saw another poll again with Uncle Joe up by 6 points, I think it was.
Yes.
And 6 or 7, something like that. And, they continue to have problems with the coronavirus response. The governor now is saying what he should have been saying a long time ago, but at least he's there now. He's encouraging people to wear masks. He's encouraging social distancing. I think people are starting to see that the president was completely wrong on this. And they look at Houston and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they see ICU beds completely full, or at least almost full. and they see that they might have made a mistake.
But they probably will have recovered a bit
Yep.
by the election. Although we don't know, we could be in for a second wave that comes before this wave falls out. So we just don't know what's going to happen.
We also don't know what's going to happen with public schools in Texas.
Yeah,
that's going to happen sometime in September. Well, probably August, but certainly September. And those huge urban areas, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
What is going to happen? And if they are forced to reopen, is there going to be a teacher strike? American Federation of Teachers nationwide is talking about it. They've at least used the word. So what happens then? I mean, there could be so much chaos going into this election that that's why I've moved it into the toss-up category, because those huge urban areas are going to be impacted one way or the other in late August and early September, whether they're done with coronavirus completely or not.
Well, I will also say that in 2016, Texas was one of the states in which Hillary Clinton outperformed the polls.
Yeah.
In other words, they had her losing, but she did better than they projected. I think, and again, as I brought up last time, you've got all those states down in the Southwest and California and Texas that have Latino votes, and they are not factored into as most likely votes. Right. Just as in the Northwest, a lot of poor white votes were not factored in, and that's why Trump overperformed there. So we've got that aspect of it. And we know that the Latino vote is growing in Texas. We know that the tech industry is bringing more people from places like California and the Pacific Northeast into places like Austin, and it just we know it's going to flip sooner or later. Is this the time, or is it going to be future? We don't know, but it's the trajectory is that it's going to be a blue state at some point again, as it was.
One last thing on Texas, the fact that we're even talking about it, and we're not the only ones, by the way, means that the Republicans are going to have to pay attention to Texas. Trump is going to have to visit Texas. In fact, he's there on the day that we're recording this. I believe he's in Midland today. But it means that they're going to have to buy a lot of ads in expensive large markets like Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, and so on. So they're going to have to use time and resources. They're going to have to use a lot of money. Plus, in a state that size, as we know here in California, it takes a lot of time to cover a state like that. And we don't know what this fall campaign is going to be like because of coronavirus. But if the candidates are going to be out and about, it's going to take time and money in Texas that they could be spending in places like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan and Pennsylvania. Yeah. So whatever happens in Texas, it's going to cost the Republicans.
Yeah. Last note on Texas, Representative Gomert tested positive today. He's refused to wear a mask. And in fact,
he blamed it on wearing a mask.
Yeah, I know.
I was wearing a mask.
Yeah, and he was right next to Barr, who also wasn't wearing a mask yesterday. Right. So we'll see what happens there. Barr said he's going to get tested. I just assumed he was tested every day. All right, I want to go up to the other corner because it's a small one, but this is one where we've had a little bit of disagreement. Maine. You've got the first and second district. Now, there is a poll out yesterday from Colby College. I'm not familiar with them as a pollster. I'm not even familiar with the college, to be honest. And they've got Biden up in the first district, Biden up by 20. In the second district, Biden up by 3. And overall, in Maine, up by 12. Now, 3 is pretty close, and we know that Trump took that second district, which takes up most of the land area of Maine. I've got the at large and the District 1 safe as Democrat. I think the first district that's way down on the bottom there is pretty much like Massachusetts or any of the other states. Maybe a little bit more conservative, but certainly not more conservative than New Hampshire. So, but the reason I think he's going to take the whole state is because, again, we've got a Senate race here. And Democrats are sensing blood, and they're excited about taking Susan Collins out of office. and there isn't a lot of real enthusiastic support for Collins from Republicans. And
right.
And if that vote is suppressed or, even just moderate, and the Democrats are coming out because they see an opportunity, I think that will benefit Biden as well in that. And I think he will take the second district.
Well, it could very, very well happen. And just late today, as I was getting caught up, I believe it was the Lincoln Project or one of the Never Trumper groups that is spending a lot of money on ads, just went up with a brand new ad against Susan Collins. So that again is going to energize Democrats even more. And Susan Collins is going to have to cast a tough vote on whatever kind of relief bill comes out of Congress. She's going to have to make a tough decision whether she stays loyal to McConnell and company or whether she looks at her polling and figures out what to do there in Maine. So, I got no argument with saying that Maine is a possibility all the way through blue. It could happen for sure.
Yeah, and she has not impressed anybody. No. I mean, she's caved and gone along with the Republicans, but they don't respect her because she makes all these comments going in to Kavanaugh. Oh, well, maybe he's a predator, but I'm going to vote for him anyway. Or and with impeachment, I have questions, but I'm going to vote against it. They want somebody who's gung ho. And Democrats just don't want her caving to it. So they're just I don't see that there's any enthusiasm behind her except for maybe her grandmother or whatever. I mean,
and recall that she also said after impeachment that Trump learned a lesson.
Yeah.
From impeachment. Remember?
Right.
And she stood by that for at least a couple of weeks, maybe.
Yeah, as he was firing people.
Yeah, and I think she's seen as one of those folks who really doesn't stand for anything, one way or the other, except her own reelection.
All right, I believe you have Wisconsin as a toss-up.
No, it should be. I'm not looking at.
No, Iowa. Iowa's a toss-up.
Yeah, Iowa's a gut feeling. I have in that area. I have Minnesota and Wisconsin, and also Michigan, likely going for. To some degree, likely going blue. I include Iowa in there because, as I've said before, there's a whole different political calculus in the state of Iowa that has a lot to do with the global economy, because so much of the state economy in Iowa is pegged to what can or doesn't happen with regard to trade agreements and international commerce and so on, because of agriculture. And I think that that is a place that, given Trump's ideas on tariffs and what's going on with China right now, could make some voters in Iowa a little uneasy about 4 more years of Donald Trump. Not that they dislike him today or yesterday or tomorrow, but they think in the future. They think long term, because that's how their economy adjusts in the agricultural markets. And so I can just imagine conversations at kitchen tables in Des Moines and Ames and Iowa City and so on about 4 more years. Do we want to risk the economy 4 more years of this? We don't know. So I have it as a toss-up just because of that issue.
I have it actually, in fact, this is probably our biggest disagreement, because I actually have it as likely, not just lean Trump. And the reason I do is because when there was resistance to Trump in the primaries and a lack of enthusiasm for him by traditional Republicans, Iowa just went all out for him. Their Republican Party was gung-ho. Iowa used to be a swing state. Gore took it. I think Kerry took it. But it's become more and more conservative for whatever reason, and I haven't really studied that. And so I just feel like it's probably out of range for Democrats. But who knows? I mean, again, it's going to be based on turnout, and you may be right. Iowa people were hurt by his trade games.
Yeah, so, and they had Tom Vilsack, for example, Democrat, but so it's possible. I think it's a difficult state to gauge. So that one is absolutely just a gut feeling.
All right, I was looking at the Rust Belt really quickly. I have Wisconsin as lean, and the reason I do, rather than likely, and the reason I do is just because even though that last election went well for Democrats, with the judge and all, to Wisconsin has so many times, gone red.
Yeah.
When there was a lot of hope from Democrats that they would go blue, mostly in off-year elections, but it's not Michigan, and it's not Minnesota even. Minnesota's also kind of moving more purplish than a solid blue. Back when it was the only
Yeah.
state that Mondale took, and back when it was the Union Democratic vote almost every time.
Yeah. The
And
Wellstone days. Remember the Wellstone days in Minnesota?
Yes, yeah, and although I think that Minnesota's likely, but Wisconsin I have as a lean just because I don't trust it. Even though the polls have them ahead, the CBNC Change Research, a Democrat outfit, actually has Biden doing better in Wisconsin than in Michigan.
Mhm.
And that surprises me, and I don't believe that. I'm actually almost ready to put Michigan in a safe
Yeah.
seat. I don't think Trump will win Michigan, barring some major change in the C thing, some major gaffe or scandal or something that comes out. I just don't see. I think right now, if the election were to be held, that Biden would probably win by 20 points in Michigan.
Yeah. Could I add one thing to that? Just
Sure.
it might have been last night or early this morning. I read that the Republicans are taking down some of their ads in Michigan, moving that money to Pennsylvania because they think Michigan is maybe out of reach at this point. So you may be spot on right about that. And the thing, when you see an action like that by a major party, I mean, that tells you a lot about what their internal polling is showing them, as well as what some of the public-facing polling is. That means that some of their internal polling is at least as stark as what we're seeing publicly. So, I mean, for them to take money out of a state like Michigan that was crucial to his win last time, shows that something's going on there, and they're not confident at all about Michigan. So.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think even in 2016, Clinton losing Michigan was a fluke. Even with everything she did, it wouldn't have taken much at all. One trip probably would have won it for her. One trip to Detroit or something like that. She needed to energize the black vote, and she needed to get what's left of the labor union out. And Biden will do that. And Biden's from Pennsylvania originally, right? So, yeah, he relates. They relate to him. I think he's probably going to win Pennsylvania. I got Pennsylvania as likely, but too many more polls like the ones I've been seeing. I may move that into safe.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And, even some of the kind of the micro polling in the western part of Pennsylvania, that's usually far more red than the rest of the state, is looking like Biden right now. So I agree. Yeah, I think Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are all going to go blue.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look. I believe you have Ohio as a toss-up.
Yeah. Do I have a toss-up or
maybe not? I'm not sure.
Lean red. Let me see. I have Ohio as lean red.
Okay, I have it as likely red. Here I am on the other side of as you. You've been actually kind of in the past said that Ohio just wasn't going to go blue at any time. That was before the craziness, of course.
Pre-crazy, yeah. Iowa. I mean, Ohio, you could draw a line through the middle of Ohio, and the southern part of Ohio, including Cincinnati, is red, and the northern part of Ohio, including part of Columbus and Cleveland, blue. So, and that's what it's all about in that state. It's how far ahead can the Republican be in Cincinnati, and how far ahead can the Democrat be in Cleveland, and then what happens in Columbus. So. And that's Ohio in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's going to be red. Cleveland's going to be blue. Columbus is 50-50, always has been. So the battle is in the city of Columbus, which, by the way, is within the city limits, is the largest city in the state. So And the latest polling I've seen there looks like Columbus is probably going to be a toss-up. So it's possible if Joe spends a lot of time, if he can, there, and if they do a lot of ad buys in the Columbus area, maybe they can pull out a win in Columbus that's large enough that maybe Joe can take Ohio. It's possible. There's a Republican governor there now, but the Republican governor, Mike DeWine, is not exactly a Trump 2020 flag carrying
No,
kind
he's
of.
not.
He's very bright and kind of a practical kind of person who's actually interested in governing. One of the few Republicans left who understands governing. So, that's why I just have it lean.
Yeah.
We'll see. What do you think about it?
Well, my understanding is Kasich may actually, there's rumors that he's going to endorse Biden.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, and so we'll see what happens. There's actually some big name Republicans, which there are rumors going around who may do it. Possibly even Bush. I don't know. That would be really a shocker, but that wouldn't actually surprise me. I know that Bush hates Trump, and I know that Trump hates Bush. That's
that family. I mean, remember what Trump had to say about Jeb Bush during the primaries.
Yes.
2015 and 16. So
yeah. Plus, he was attacking Bush on the Iraq War, and Republicans aren't supposed to do that. That was a heresy. It was kind of interesting. All right, why don't we? I want to go back real quickly up to the Northeast, New Hampshire. I have it as likely Democrat, likely Biden. And the reason is New Hampshire is, of course, the most conservative or the least liberal of the New England states.
Right.
But it's still New England, and it still more often than not goes blue. I believe that the last time it went red was Bush took it in 2000. If Gore had managed just to keep that state, he would have won that election, even with what happened in Florida. But then Kerry took it again in 2004, and I don't think the Democrats have lost it since. Everybody talks about how, well, you've got the Party of Lincoln types up there, but I just don't see I think that's your never Trumper crowd. And so I actually have it likely, and I might even, by the next time around, move it into a safe Biden seat.
Really? Well, what you just said there, the Party of Lincoln state, that would argue for them going against Trump. I mean, it's the never Trumpers, the biggest never Trumpers now are in what's called the Lincoln Project.
Yes.
Trying to, and a lot of them are even saying that it's their opinion at this point that the Republican Party just needs to be burned to the ground and rebuilt brick by brick. So it could be. It could be. I also know that New Hampshire is, yes, kind of the Party of Lincoln state, but there's an independent streak in most of the New England states. Even though each state tends to lean in one way or the other, there's a lot of independent streak in all of New England as a region. So, again, what we keep saying, if I'm hearing our conversation correctly in real time, is that Biden pretty much has a chance everywhere because Trump is so bad and so despised and so disgusting. And, on a day like today, when he's been retweeting some of the bizarre stuff that he's been amplifying out there on Twitter and other places, this could be a blowout. I mean, it really could be.
It could be. But, we were saying that in 2016, so we're all really cautious. And maybe everybody's overly cautious because of it. They're gun shy by it. Real quickly, let's talk about the Nebraska 2nd District, Omaha. You and I both have it as lean Biden. And I actually know somebody who lives in Lincoln, a family who live in Lincoln, Nebraska, that's outside that district. But they seemed bullish on the idea of Biden winning it. And then I've read again an article that people in Omaha are really the Democrats there are are really energized about it. Obama took it in 2008, and that's when some Republicans in the legislature there were talking about nixing that so that it would just become a winner-take-all state. It never came together because they like that tradition. But I think there's a good chance.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't really heard that, but I can see that. Their senator, Sass, is not exactly a far right person. He's young-ish, who's a little more moderate than some Republicans you might expect to find from a place like Nebraska. Omaha, an urban area, so there would seem to be a chance there. You mentioned Lincoln, that's a college town. There should be a chance there. It's the far western part of Nebraska that's generally the most conservative. North Platte, Scotts Bluff, all of that out there in western Nebraska. Again, I don't think anything would surprise me. Omaha, as urban areas go, Omaha is, on the conservative side for an urban area. But
it's still an urban area.
But it's still an urban area with urban issues that tend to be more blue.
Yeah. All right. Why don't we're starting to get towards the top of the hour here. So why don't we go to North Carolina, which we both have as a toss-up?
Yeah.
And real quickly, Cunningham is way out in front in the polls for the Senate. That looks like a possibility for a Senate takeover. And again, I think an enthusiastic Democratic base might carry it. Obama took it at least once. I don't know if he took it the second time, but it was really close in 2016. It's a changing district. More Northeasterners are moving there, and it's being affected by Virginia, which I'm almost ready to make. I have it as likely, but I'm almost ready to declare it safe based on the polling. What do you think of North Carolina?
Well, first of all, I think you're astute to point to Virginia there. I think I have Virginia as safe. I think I've gone that far on Virginia so far. A couple of things about North Carolina. Yes, Tom Tillis, a Republican incumbent, trailing by that much that's news, especially in that part of the country. Secondly, the other thing that I think is driving some of the blue enthusiasm in North Carolina has to do with the city of Charlotte. And recall that the Republicans were going to have a convention there and then completely bungled the whole coronavirus response. That affected the whole convention plans in Charlotte. And so I think that energized a lot of people in that area. And of course, that's a large part of the voting population in that state. So the other thing about North Carolina is what's called the Research Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. That's a blue area right there. Asheville in the west is blue. So if you add some of the trouble that Charlotte has gone through by trying to host the Republican convention and then seeing it just devolve into chaos, I could see a win in North Carolina. And it is a state that has ping-ponged between blue and red over the years. So it would not be stunning, but I think I could even see it moving from toss-up to lean blue at some point soon.
Yeah, definitely. We also can't discount, you mentioned Charlotte. That's where a very pivotal event happened, with involving the alt-right, of course, very violent situation. And I think that's left a bad taste in the mouth of the whole state. Especially since, even though it's been taken out of context, his comment about, well, there's nice people on both sides, it's and just the fallout from it, the fact that a woman was killed, and just the fact that they were inundated by this, and the fact that Trump does not really take the steps to really tell the alt-right he doesn't want their support, because he can't win without them. And
that's a huge question. Is for the Republican enablers writ large, how do they navigate that going into the future? Because that segment is going to become smaller and smaller and smaller as a percentage of the voting public as we move forward. So that's precisely why I agree with the Lincoln Project folks and the Never Trumpers that at this point they need to burn the house down and rebuild it. because they are swimming against the currents demographically in this country, and it's clear to anybody who can look at a set of statistics and a map.
Right. All right. The last three states, I think that unless there's something you feel we've missed, that we really need to discuss are Florida, Georgia, and Arizona. It's been pointed out that if Biden keeps all of the Clinton states and loses the whole Rust Belt, with Florida and Arizona, he could still win, and that could happen. And Florida and Arizona are two states, like Texas, that are really being hit hard right now with the coronavirus. Will that last, and will that have a lasting impact? But I think Trump's demographic of older voters is a little bit soft right now because they're the ones that are vulnerable to this. And Governor DeSantis, it was just an outright defiance of science the whole time, and they're paying for it now. I mean, I don't know what today's figure was, but yesterday it was almost 200 deaths in one day. That was starting to get into New York, earlier New York type figures. And so on top of it, I do think that Florida it's always a swing state, no matter what. It's always it's always a close election, right. And if the rest of the country is going a certain way, I just don't see, unless Trump has reversed that he's going to have much of a chance in Florida, and the polls have him way below.
I think you're right. And, the thing about two of those states that you mentioned, Florida and Arizona, that's where a lot of Trump's voters are. That's 65 and above, the retirees in Florida and Arizona. They vote in large numbers, and they pay attention to things like health care because they have to at that point. And he's completely bungled the coronavirus response. He's also made a lot of noise about getting rid of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, which are things that supposedly, if you want that voting bloc to vote for you, you don't touch those issues. So he's made all kinds of mistakes with one of his biggest constituencies, and that's why he has a choice. He has a chance in Florida and in Arizona.
Yeah. No, and Arizona, now granted, Arizona has been changing. Clinton was also outperformed the polls there. Right. Latino vote, big Navajo vote, and they got hit really hard, by the way, with the coronavirus. And also more Californians retiring, baby boomers who aren't of the older, the conservative set. Arizona, I've got lean, but I may move that into likely if I see too many more polls, and we'll talk next time about the Senate race, but it looks like Miscali is on her way to a loss there, but to Kelly, who, was obviously, has a history. And between that and Florida, I mean, I don't. In Florida, I saw one poll that had him down by 15 points, another one by 13 points. It seems like it's going to be hard to overcome.
Well, I think if Trump loses Florida, it's over.
Yeah.
I don't think he can afford to lose Florida or Texas or Ohio, any of those three. I think if Biden takes any of those three, it's just completely over. Of course, the problem is that we're not going to have an answer on the night of November the 3rd because of the amount of mail-in ballots that are likely to be sent in. But I think if he loses Florida, he's done.
All right. Well, lastly, that takes us to Georgia, and that's kind of an exciting year. There's actually two Senate races. There's a special race going on. Latest polls I have show that the Republican senators are up by 6 and 7 points. Doesn't surprise me, but that's also pretty close, within striking distance. And I believe that Trump is ahead in Georgia, but not by all that much. It's a state, as I keep talking about, the Atlanta metropolitan area is growing, becoming more younger, and there's a lot of brain people moving there from other parts of the country. Black vote is energized. They've got, we've even talked about his possibility that Mayor Bottoms could be a VP choice. I have it as lean Georgia, but if we find out, usually on election day, the results come in. Georgia and Vermont and I think South Carolina are usually the first ones to report because they close at 4:30 or something or 3:30, whatever, half hour earlier than everybody else. Usually it's set, but if again, we don't know because of the mail vote, but under normal circumstances, we know whether or not he's passed Georgia. If it's ambiguous, I would say we'll know that early in the evening that he's probably lost because it should not be ambiguous in Georgia.
Yeah, I agree.
Any real quick things about Georgia, and then we'll move into our predictions.
Well, I think because of the Atlanta metro area and maybe Savannah and Athens and Macon as well, I think a lot of this is going to be determined by public schools and what happens with the public schools, especially in the huge Atlanta area. And I think a lot of people, that's going to be something that's recent on people's minds by election day. So we'll see how that unfolds. I think it's going to have an impact.
All right. Predictions. A couple things here. One is I am switching my prediction. I am no longer thinking that Elizabeth Warren will be the VP just because I've sort of tested it out on forums with Democrats, and it seems like at this point it almost has to be an African American woman. So with that, who is most likely? Well, Biden does have to attract the progressive vote. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, there's this talks of California Congressman Culver City Karen Bass. She has got the progressive bona fides, is in the progressive caucus, supports universal health care and a number of other key issues. That could be the compromise. And I also think that because they really want to take the Senate, that the Democrats are really worried about giving up that Massachusetts seat if it's going to be close, because they may only take 50 and then need the vice president to break the tie. So that's one of my predictions. And then my other prediction is I think some Republicans are going to start distancing themselves from Trump. I think they're going to be grateful that they're not rallies that they have to show up and be on the stage with. Tillis, for instance. Yep. I think they're going to avoid him and avoid questions and be evasive in questions about Trump. And I think that's going to start happening over the next few weeks.
Yeah, very good. I agree with you. I think the same thing can happen with John Cornyn in Texas, by the way, not wanting to be seen with Trump because of what we just talked about Texas a few minutes ago. Okay, predictions. This one is my prediction for the October surprise. My prediction for the October surprise is on the Biden side. I think Joe Biden, given his close, long friendship with the McCain family, is going to convince Cindy McCain to endorse him in October. And I cannot think of a more revered person in Republican circles, and deservedly so, than John McCain. And I think that Cindy McCain has had enough. And I think that there's going to be something happen with Cindy McCain in October, maybe before, but certainly in October, that has to do with her at least saying that she does not support Donald Trump at the very least. So that's one. Two, between November 3rd and Inauguration Day, which I think is January 20th or so, something like that, I think that there's going to be, unfortunately, a long period in there that when we're not going to know for sure what the results are. And I think that that's going to be a dangerous time. I think if we don't get the results within a week or two, that there could be some confrontations on the streets between militias and demonstrators and so on, and it could get violent. So I'm hoping that we can get the result as soon after November the 3rd as possible, because otherwise things are going to fester and boil the longer it goes, because people on both sides are so anxious about this.
Yeah. Well, Stalin is often misquoted as saying, he who counts the votes, wins. It's he never said that. Actually, it's an urban legend. But there is something to that. We got to look and see at what at what point we're talking about suppression, and we're talking about how the votes are going to be counted and which ballots are going to be tossed and what the rules are going to be for mail-in. And that's something we're going to have to watch closely, because if Trump can win, that's about the only way, I think.
Well, and just the last couple of days, he's been floating the idea that a vote that is counted after November 3rd, which a lot of mail-in ballots are, don't count, which is, of course, ridiculous. But he's already sending up trial balloons about all kinds of things as a way of cheating in this election. So.
All right. All right. Thank you, Chuck. And thank you, Matt, and the Access Humboldt. Did I say it right? Is it Humboldt Access or Access Humboldt? Oh, right. Well, next time we will discuss the Senate races in detail. And again, thank you, everyone. And until next time.